In 1946, in Poland, a series of trials were held to prove the guilt of those who ran the Stutthof concentration camp. Horrible crimes had occurred on this site, and thousands of people had died in the most cruel ways. It was even rumored that the corpses had been used to make soap. Among the defendants were dozens of Nazis, both men and women, who had worked as prison guards and subjected prisoners to hell. However, there was one girl who stood out above the rest. She was a beautiful 24-year-old girl, whom witnesses called Crazy Jenny. It was said that she was a renowned assassin, though she did not seem to be interested in anything that was going on around her. As the prosecutors recounted one by one her terrible crimes, she fixed her hair and smiled at the guards who watched her. Finally, when the judges handed down the sentence, Jenny uttered a few words that stunned those present. Today, in this new episode of Military History, we will tell you the story of Jenny Barkmann, the model who became a Nazi torturer. Jenny Wanda Barkmann was born on May 30, 1922, in Hamburg, Germany. Not much is known about her early years. Her family was humble, her father worked at the port and her mother was a housewife. She lived her childhood in the days of the Weimar Republic, when a democratic government was established in the German nation. That was an unstable time, since the National Socialist movement of Adolf Hitler, little by little, gained weight and spread his ideas among the population. Jenny perfectly suited what the Nazis considered her to be the ideal human being. She was a blonde girl with blue eyes and she stood out for her innocent appearance. In short, she could be considered part of what Hitler and his followers called the Aryan race, that is, the group of people destined to rule the world due to their supposedly pristine genetics. After completing her high school studies, Jenny Barkmann pursued a career in modeling and acting. She wanted to capitalize on her beauty and she wanted a life of fame and glamour, working for the world's top studios and designers. She very soon got a job and attended her first photography sessions. The future torturer had a natural talent for posing in front of the cameras, and job offers immediately began to multiply, so she was photographed for fashion magazines and men's magazines, which were oriented towards erotic content. Images of Jenny half-naked, showing a mischievous smile and a suggestive look, circulated among the soldiers who were far from their homes, fighting on the front lines. The men of the German armed forces had few moments to distract themselves from the horrors of war, but when they did, it was often thanks to photographs of women like Jenny. In this way, the German troops remembered that there was a future beyond the bombing, shooting, and death to which they had become accustomed. They could dream of returning to their homes, dating someone like our protagonist, starting a family and leaving the trauma of the war in the past. Around 1944, when Jenny was 22 years old, something unexpected happened. She was in the best moment of her life, working on what she was passionate about and with the expectation of jumping to international fame. However, for some unknown reason, Jenny decided to change her life completely. She gave up the world of modeling and looked for a job as a guard in a concentration camp. It is possible that she was motivated by the high salary paid to prison guards or that she had an irrepressible desire to be in a position of power. On the other hand, it can be speculated that the difficult situation that the Third Reich was going through at that time, which was in retreat before the might of the Allies, may have awakened in Jenny a feeling of extreme patriotism. Faced with the collapse of her country, the girl may have enlisted to guard a killing center to collaborate with the war effort. Jenny Barkmann got a job in the Stutthof camp, which was located in Poland, in an area isolated from the big cities. Around her there was nothing but forests and swamps, so getting to this place was difficult, and it was surrounded by an electrified barbed wire fence, so getting out of it was difficult as well. It had been inaugurated in 1939, and members of the Polish elite, including political leaders, intellectuals, religious leaders and businessmen, were sent to its cells. Over time, the site became a shelter for prisoners of war coming from the Eastern Front and for Jews who had been deported from Germany. Unsurprisingly, the Stutthof inmates were subjected to a hellish routine, which consisted of forced labor for Nazi arms factories, only to return to their barracks where they were cold and hungry. Diseases devastated the camp population, and those who survived the epidemics were, in many cases, sent to die in the gas chamber. Although the guards had to mistreat the prisoners, the truth is that our protagonist stood out for her high level of cruelty. Jenny Barkman enjoyed the pain of the Stutthof inmates to the point that she devised a whole variety of new tortures to make life miserable for them. Her favorite was to beat them with a leather whip, lashing them until the cuts were so many and so deep that they died from loss of blood. Sometimes, the former model chose to leave her victims alive, so she only unloaded the lashes on their heels, tearing their feet and leaving them paralyzed. According to certain witnesses, Jenny murdered the prisoners that she hated the most in a particularly sadistic way. She released some hungry dogs who devoured the victims. Her cruelty reached the point where she took the pleasure of separating mothers from their children. She found it entertaining to watch a child being led into the gas chamber while their mother watched, crying and crying, helpless to do anything to save him. It is not known what her exact number of victims was, but it is suspected that there were hundreds. Because of her aberrational crimes, the former model earned the nicknames Crazy Jenny and Beautiful Spectre. In 1945, her reign of terror collapsed overnight. The Third Reich was already on the verge of defeat, and the Red Army of the Soviet Union had begun a sweeping advance, which led it to occupy Poland and Germany. Seeing that the communist troops were near Stutthof, Jenny decided to leave the concentration camp and go on the run. This was not strange, since there were rumors that the Russians murdered the Nazis in the most cruel ways. The former model became one of the most wanted war criminals, although she managed to hide in Poland and evade justice for 4 months. She tried to keep a low profile, but her description and photos of her were spread all over Europe. One day, while Jenny was at a train station about to leave Poland, she was recognized and arrested by a military patrol. In 1946, the courts that would try those responsible for Stutthof were formed. As we told you at the beginning of the video, Jenny was among the accused, although she seemed distracted and not very interested in what was being said about her. She preferred to comb her hair and flirt with the guards, until the judges announced that she would be sentenced to death. At that moment, the former model opened her mouth and said, "Life is a pleasure, and like all pleasure, it does not last long." These enigmatic words perplexed those present, who saw how the young woman was taken back to her cell. She never complained, cried, or begged for mercy. Instead, she accepted her fate with an eerie calm. On July 4, 1946, Jenny, along with 10 other war criminals, was driven up Biskup Hill, located in Gdansk, Poland. Some 200 people gathered to watch the execution of the Nazis, as if it were a great show. Instead of mounting a scaffold, they put a rope around her neck, which was then looped over a post and tied to the back of a truck. The vehicle then moved forward, and the girl was suspended in the air. Her face turned purple and her feet kicked for a few minutes, until she finally stopped moving. This is how the story of Jenny Barkman, the woman who went from being a model to one of the most sadistic torturers of Nazism, concluded. We have reached the end of the video, and we want to ask you, why do you think Jenny Barkman abandoned modeling and joined Nazism? Leave us your answer in the comment box below, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history.